Sorry about the quality of this one, but I took it to just show the height of the kitchen. The room was very high indeed, and the windows that would be open at the top here to let the smoke out. That's why it was so tall. And here's your servants' hall. This is the butler and the housekeeper would be one each end, and then the household servants would have their place each side. Very Downton Abbey, aren't they? Very Downton Abbey-ish. So butler, that's the butler's pantry. Just reminds me to tell you, he's responsible for all the monies paid in and out, and this is his books here. So he's bookkeeper as well. And he has to account for every single penny that comes in and goes out. And the deliveries were made, his window would be just here, and the deliveries would come in via a certain route and end up by his window to be, and he would go out and count the number of bags of flour, for example, that were being delivered. And if you had ordered 20 and 19 arrived, you got paid for 19. Quite rightly so. That's where they'd go through there and round the back there to the butler's window. And this is the other side of the courtyard. Just to show you, the men's quarters would be up here. So women's behind me, men's across the way. Just another lovely view of the courtyard. And very briefly, Eliza's day. I don't know which is the worst job, Eliza's or Sarah's. I've never been able to decide. But I'm erring on the side of Sarah's job being worse, but I still can't decide. If you make a mistake in the kitchen and you're due to dish dinner up in 5 minutes, you're in trouble, aren't you? If you make a mistake in the laundry, you can hide it for a bit longer. But unfortunately, the work in the laundry, and there's only 2 of you, would be very heavy work indeed. For a start off, Eliza has to fill 32 buckets of water using this every morning. She carries them 2 at a time. She has to count them as well. Imagine if you've lost count halfway through because somebody just, I'd get distracted. She's very lucky though, because we had, even back in the 1870s, the most modern laundry in Staffordshire. Looks it, doesn't it? And we had metal buckets. A lot of the laundries didn't have metal buckets. We had a sloping floor, though you can't see it here. But just about here, there's a drain in the middle of the floor. And you don't get foot rot. Because all the water, especially if you dodge out of the way of it when you're emptying the things, you don't get wet feet, or not soaking wet anyway. She lights a fire and gets this, she puts the water into here, and this is your copper boiler. So she's doing, filling up the copper boiler. Very heavy work. And there's your dolly tubs and dolly pegs. I don't need to explain that to you guys. Again, imagine a young group coming in to the laundry. I used to do the school downs, and they'd say, "What's that, miss?" And I'd say, "That's your washing machine. You're going to be using that today." And they go, "What? That's not a washing machine." "Oh, yes, it is. Now be quiet and stand in line." Yeah, that's how we used to have to talk to them. Yeah, it's great fun. So we know what that is, don't we? But she'd have to fill those dolly tubs up and then grate the soap in. Oh, what a lot of work. And here's your mangle. Why did we all want to play with mangles when we were kids? Most dangerous piece of kit around. You got your hair stuck in it, you have to cut it off. There was no going backwards. If you got your fingers stuck in there, you have to get someone to dismantle the thing. You couldn't turn it backwards, you couldn't get your fingers out. Oh, that would have been really painful, wouldn't it? If you ever did it once, you'd never do it again. Hair cut off is one thing, fingers quite another. This is an industrial-sized mangle. Massive, great big thing. So another view of it. So your handle goes on there. We used to take it off when it wasn't in use because it's be so easy to walk into and hurt yourself. The elves and the safeties, yeah. It's on at the moment, but we used to take it off every night. And yeah, that's for your sheets, your very large pieces of cloth. Don't forget the sheets and these very large tablecloths and many other things to wash. Soap. I can't believe what soap used to be made out of. Ash and animal fat. The white potash and animal fat. Disgusting. Not only was it disgusting, but I can't understand how it would get clothes clean. But apparently it did. But I'm not going to try it. We did used to have Daz hidden under the but I've just told you a little secret now. But this would have been the soap that they would have used in 1870. And this is from Harrods, or Harrods as I call it. And this is the family soap. It has got Harrods printed on the top, but you can't see it from where I've taken the photo. And this is the servant's soap. Yeah, a bit different, isn't it? And it would be yellow inside. This, of course, aged a lot. You can just make out that's yellow there. But this, of course, as I say, has aged a lot. But you can see where the expression bar of soap comes from, can't you? It was a long bar and you had a piece cut off for you. And that's where that shape of soap comes from. And you had a piece given to you, you had to trade it in, a little bit in, for a new piece. And you couldn't use it too quickly. You had to be careful with your soap. Mind you, you had a bath once a week, whether you needed it or not. In your little foot bath. So, there you go. And here's my friend, Eliza. She's standing by the box mangle, which is a giant ironing machine. See the cloths under here? You'd roll them on. The only young man that was allowed in the laundry was young William, and he would operate the box mangle. And why were the men not allowed in the laundry? Their ladyship's underwear. Never to be seen. Never to be seen. And the windows were frosted glass, so nobody could see in, i.e. men couldn't see in. So a big handle was put on here, and as I say, he'd wind it this way, then that way, and it would roll these cloths flat. These are the massive tablecloths and other large cloths. And it would iron them, because they were too big for an ironing table. There it is, in its full glory. Very few of those around, so interesting for you to look at. Very few of these around as well. Iron stack. This came from a school in Wolverhampton. His lordship was reading in the paper that the school was shutting down and they were selling things off. And he put decided he wanted to buy this, put a bid in for it, and he bought this and brought it back to Shudborough, or had it brought back to Shudborough, for the use in the laundry. And there's 36 irons would go on here, loads and loads of all different sizes. Great piece of kit, isn't it? You light a fire in the bottom here, or rather Eliza does, and it heats the iron stack up, it heats the metal up, and heats the irons up. So you've always got a hot iron to use, and different sizes meant different materials. Your cap, your lady's cap, would show your status in the house. This would probably be the housekeeper's hat. My hat, as Sarah the kitchen maid, was very plain. It was straight and it was plain, more like a baseball cap. But this is a very fancy one. These are all the different irons and the different uniforms. This is the coachman's outfit. And he had many layers to sit on the coach in the pouring rain. Horrible, wouldn't it? Especially when it was been cold. And he'd have a big hat that would be weighted down so that all the rain would wash off his hat, over his shoulders, and those would be put over the coach, would be put over the back of the coach seat. So it all ran off down his back and onto the ground below. Laundry maid, you know that now, don't you? and housemaid and probably governess. So these two would be a housemaid and a governess. Governess had, they would wear normal clothes so that they would fit into the sort of house. They wouldn't stand out too much. These were the people who went in the house during the day, not the little girls that used to empty the gazundas in the first light, you know, as soon as they could. These are the people who were in the house during the day and might be seen by visitors, but they weren't allowed to dress in bright colours which might compete with her ladyship. Yeah. That's her ladyship that dressed in bright colours, and her daughters. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end.
Somebody special to come so we might have to do with nail and things like that, sewing.
To do sewing?
Yes,
no, the laundry maids did that. The laundry, I didn't say that. Oh, by the way, the laundry maid, poor old Eliza, she had another horrible job. I'm glad you said that. Reminded me to tell you. She had to take all the buttons off the men's shirts, wash them, mangle them, because the buttons wouldn't go through the mangle, and sew them back on again. It's horrendous, isn't it? What were you going to ask?
I'm a great fan of Downton Abbey.
I love it.
Even to the extent of having the box set in DVD. But what I see when I watch that is a very different relationship, I think, between the master of the house and the servant, to the one that you explained.
I think it's very similar.
Do you?
Yeah, very similar indeed.
Everybody knows the servant by their first name. He's not averse to going down to the servant's quarters to have a chat with them.
Yeah, his lordship would have done that. He would have gone to see the butler on a very regular basis. Yeah. It's just that the butler was in charge of the daily running of the servants in the household. But yeah, I think it's very similar. They've got a lot of things right in Downton Abbey as well. Occasionally I stab at the TV and go, no, that's not right. But 90% of it is correct. If you look at the servants, the way they eat, there's no stable boys in there. No. There's no outside kitchen maids ate in the kitchen. It was all correct. All at Downton Abbey. Yeah, so it's correct. And yeah, his lordship would know his servants. But if you think about it, there were one or two of her ladyships that didn't know one or two of the servants, did they? On a few occasions in Downton Abbey. So whether his lordship was more familiar with the servants, I don't know. Any other questions?
Copper has antimicrobial
does
properties.
it? I've learned something new every day.
So the hospitals these days got bright, shiny handrails. They were better off with the old brass ones because the brass will kill the bacteria within minutes. And the stainless steel ones won't.
I thought it was because it heated up.
Oh, well, yeah, it's that as well.
Yeah,
but
they said I was reading that the cooking pans have antiseptic qualities, and I didn't believe it.
No,
but you're telling me it's true. Wow.
If they change all door handles, you're not sticking the copper. They'll never have MRSA in your hospital. Because everybody is
Really?
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
I'm always open to learning. I'll learn from anybody.
What about the washing with the very elaborate gats that were
You didn't. What you did was you would have freshened them up, but you didn't wash them. You couldn't possibly have put silk and that into. But what her ladyships did have was many petticoats, and they were the things that got washed. Her ladyship's underwear, and you could put them in as much hot water as you wanted. You know, they were made out of cotton, so it was that got washed, and the top undergarments as well that got washed. But you wouldn't put silk or anything, any of the outer. And they changed their. When I say changed, fashion-wise, they would have new dresses made for them quite regularly. And it was a thin outer layer. Your dress as a lady was a thin outer layer like this. I don't mean wool, but I mean just a thin. It would just go over all your other clothes. So if you took that off, just that outer layer, and it was like when the ladies used to get dressed up. I never did, but when the ladies used to get dressed up in the house, it was more like my jacket. Back to front, so their arms would go in and they'd get buttoned up at the back, And then there would be a skirt that went on separately, and the jacket went over the skirt. And it matched. So it wasn't always a dress. It was a top and a bottom, a skirt and a jacket, if you like. And that outer layer, it would only get washed if wine got spilt on it, and that would be to rinse the stain out, and then it'd get hung up to dry. And that would be in cold water. It would never get put in the dolly tub. So yeah, so they didn't really get washed as such. They'd get freshened up and kept nice, you know, with perfumes and things. They wouldn't get washed.
In a lot of National Trust houses now, when you go in the servants' quarters, they've got the plates laid out, and it says what the servant did and the salary for the year.
Did on that one, yeah. It did on that one, but you couldn't see it. Yeah, but it would say, for example, butler, and he was at the head of the table, and the housekeeper would be at the other end. Yeah, so that's correct. Yeah, they've done that.
You mentioned £30 a year. Do you know what that is roughly in today's terms?
That's a hard one to work out. I've talked about this a lot. Short answer is probably no. It's very difficult to work out. She'd be getting £1 a month, wouldn't she? But that wasn't a lot of money, because the only way that you can sort of compare it really is to say, well, a really good miner was on 5 shillings a week. Yeah. How many pounds was that?
That's £1 a month.
Oh no, that's wrong then, isn't it? I haven't worked that out right. She got £12 a year, so that's £1 a month.
Yeah.
But when I was reading about miners, they got about 5 times more than that, maybe 6. Let's put it that way. That's the easier way. But they had to pay for their food, clothes, children, rent. So who was better off? Financially, the servants were. They also didn't have anywhere to go and spend their money except on their days off. And they didn't need anything really. Might go and buy a new bonnet now and again, but there was nothing really. When the young servants first started, they would send money home to help the family out. But as they got older and the family didn't need the money anymore, the children grew up and so on, their money was their own. And many's a time, his lordship, not at Shugborough specifically, but at different places, has borrowed money from a servant when they've got into trouble. Yeah, that's been known to happen many times.
Okay, well, thank you very much.